Sorry, Mike, that was me laughing.
Wow.
We are on the public line and we are ready to begin.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the special called meeting of the State Board of Education. I want to welcome all of our board members who are joining us today, along with Commissioner Schwinn, Dr. Sarah Morrison, State Board staff, Department of Education staff, and all who are joining us remotely today. It's a little bit after 2 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Casey Griffin on our staff will call the roll to establish a quorum. Mr. Griffin?
Mr. Cobbins?
Here.
Mr. Darnell? Mr. Eby?
Here.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Mr. Ferguson?
Here.
Ms. Kim?
Here.
Mr. Kraus?
Here.
Ms. Tucker?
Here.
And Ms. Hargrove?
Here.
Madam Chairman, you have a quorum.
We have a quorum and we are duly convened, and without objection, Nick Darnell is excused. We're going to move into item 1, statement of necessity, provided by Ms. Amy Owen.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 49-1-602-2, the Department of Education shall recommend and the State Board shall approve performance designations for LEAs and schools based on the established performance goals and measures. In order to make these recommendations official so that the public may be informed and districts and schools may begin to receive additional support if needed, the Board must vote on these items. Because of the limited time for the State Board to approve the school and district designation lists, this special called teleconference meeting has been convened to allow the Board to review and approve the proposed designations. In addition, the State Board will also vote on time-sensitive policies and rules, including rules regarding education savings accounts, a new occupational educator scholarship program, teacher and administrator evaluation policy, and amendments to charter agreement and appeals rule. Because of the time-sensitive nature of these issues, this special called teleconference meeting was convened to allow the Board to review and approve these items. As members of the State Board reside across the state, it was determined that a physical quorum of members could not be assembled in Nashville for the purposes of this special called board meeting. As such, the State Board is meeting via teleconference. Notice of this meeting was posted on the State Board website along with the agenda and instructions for dialing into the teleconference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. Before we move into the approval of the consent agenda items, I'm calling on Commissioner Schwinn to address the removal of item 4D, annual performance goals for the 2019-20 school and district accountability. Commissioner Schwinn, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm happy to be able to address this briefly. We are looking to have that information to districts earlier and earlier every year, which was the intent for this fall. After posting briefly the data, we had some concerns that there may have been an error. We took them down to be able to check the work and are looking forward to bringing it back to the Board at the October meeting.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
This is Bob Eby. On a related note, I was wondering if the Commissioner might give an update talking about accountability. We have been meeting the subcommittee on accountability that Nick Darnell and Daryl Cobbins and I continue to meet, and just kind of give us an update on where we stand on that and path forwards.
Sure. So my understanding is that the subcommittee will continue to meet throughout the year, and that will consist of the department providing updates on assessment and accountability in general. For now, we will continue to listen to stakeholder feedback, and if and when it becomes the appropriate time, bring information to the Board.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to remind all of the board members that we will be doing a roll call vote on every item today. And when you are making a motion, please state your name for the record. If you are providing the second, I want you to do the same thing. So now let's move into item 2, consent items. We have 2 separate items to vote on separately. The first one is the adoption of the agenda with item 4D removed. Is there a motion to approve?
Mike Edwards, so moved.
Mr. Edwards, thank you. Is there a second?
Bob Eby, second.
Mr. Eby, thank you. Casey Griffin, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chairman, you have 8 ayes, no nays.
The motion is approved. Thank you. Item 2B, amendments to the State Board of Education Charter School Agreements. Is there a motion to approve? This is a consent item.
This is
Yes.
Wendy, so moved.
Ms. Tucker provides the motion. Thank you. Is there a second?
Ms. Gordon, second.
Mr. Ferguson provides a second. Mr. Griffin, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chairman, you have 7 ayes, no nays.
The motion is approved. Thank you. Let's move into action items on first reading. I ask that each presenter please state your name and title for the record. Item 3A, Education Savings Account Rule, Ms. Amy Schuler and Ms. Elizabeth Fivash. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Elizabeth Fivash, Assistant Commissioner for Policy and Legislation with the Department of Education. As you all are aware, Public Chapter 506 developed the Education Savings Account Program and authorized the State Board of Education to promulgate rules for implementation of the program. This first read item presents the proposed rules that outline the requirements and processes for applicants, the use of funds, monitoring and compliance, participating school and provider approval, and other elements of the program. These proposed rules were developed by the board staff and the Department of Education staff. Additionally, the board will be holding a rulemaking hearing on October 1 to receive additional public comments that will be incorporated into the final version of the rule. Additionally, the department will be developing administrative procedures for the program in accordance with the requirements of the new law and the final rules approved by the State Board. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Are there any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, this is Bob Eby. I've got a couple of questions.
Please proceed, Mr. Eby.
First, I think under definitions, number 1, account holder, it says means a parent is defined in paragraph 13. I believe that should be paragraph 16.
You are correct. Thank you. We will make that change.
Okay. And then on paragraph 10, it talks about, says the department may suspend or terminate for low academic performance as defined, failure of participating students to make academic progress as demonstrated. And my question is, does that mean just one student, or should that be the average number of students, or how does that work out?
This is Amity Schuyler, Deputy Commissioner. Good afternoon. So it will be both, and it needs to be clarified and built out further in rule. But we are expecting the student to make satisfactory academic progress, and then if the school has multiple students, a number probably greater than 10, we would expect to see overall student performance in the cohort of students.
Okay, so you'll make that clear then for the second reading?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then one more question. Is there a role for the state board for the ESA other than just promulgating this rule? And my point is there for charter schools, if there's appeals for a charter school denial, that comes to the state board. But is there anything like that for ESAs?
There are appeal rights within the program, but those are not appealed to the state board. The appeal comes to the commissioner, which is a little different than the charter school appeal process.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Thank you. That's it for me.
This is Wendy. I have a lot of questions. Do you want me to start, or do you want everybody else to go first?
I would say please proceed, Ms. Tucker. I have some questions, and perhaps you have some that are the same. So let's have you go ahead and start.
Okay, so I'll sort of piggyback off of one of Bob's questions in that the clause, and I have it on page 11 of the red line, which is probably the same page of the regular since this is all new. But this suspending or terminating and participating in school clause. So I had two questions. One was similar to Bob's in that, in my opinion, this section on failure of participating students to make academic progress, there needs to be an actual measure there. I think that that's a little blurry, and I think if schools are going to participate in this, they need to know what that bar is. So I would encourage between now and second reading that there be some actual measurable thing there. And then the second piece on that is this, or any nationally normed assessment utilized by the school. My understanding is the statute would not allow that. The statute requires the TCAP. And so I wanted to ask that question as well.
Thank you for that feedback. We will certainly add in the more specific language around the performance measure. We are continuing to have conversations around the nationally normed assessment language, and it's something that we've communicated with the Attorney General's office about as well. So hopefully we'll have more clarity on that issue before final reading, but any progress that's made on that issue, we can certainly update you on.
Okay. All right. And then the sort of the three buckets of questions I have on the rest of it are around the teachers' issues, around disabilities issues, and around parents. So I want to start with teachers, and I've spoken with the staff about all this, so hopefully some of this got passed on to you. My concern, I'm looking at page 2, the TBI, the criminal background piece, the definition, and then the discussion of that comes later. My concern is what the requirement is for a teacher to be able to teach students who are in these schools on state dollars. And I'm going to go to page 11 that kind of piggybacks on that definition and says that the school agrees to exclude from employment, and then the two categories for exclusion are any person not permitted by state law to work in a non-public school and any person who might reasonably pose a threat to the safety of students. So my concern is, first of all, I don't know what state law requires for non-public schools. I know that you can't require them to have the same credential requirements that we have for our public schools, but I don't know what that means. And so I would love to see that a little more detail about what that means so that, you know, we as the public know who can not work in these schools, but also so that the schools have more clarity. And then the who might reasonably pose a threat, to me, is really mushy language. This board has done a lot around teacher discipline, and for teachers in our public school systems, taken a hard line on licensure. And so what I would hate to see is a teacher who has behaved poorly as a public school licensed teacher. They lose their license for, sleeping with a student or texting nude pictures of themselves or any of these things that all of us have seen on the board floor from credentialed teachers, and they get to go and serve in one of these schools and serve these students. So that's my concern around teachers, and I would love any feedback you guys have on that.
I think you bring up a good point on the definition of reasonably pose a threat, and we will define that more clearly, as well as provide more specificity around prohibitions for teaching in a non-public school. Amity, do you want to speak to the?
Yes, and you are correct in stating, of course, that the private schools have different teacher certifications and requirements. As it stands in state law, level 1 through 3 schools that would be participating in this program, those teachers are not required to be licensed in a formal manner through the Department of Education, and as such, there's no burden on the schools to research a license to see if there are any past infractions or holds from a teacher who might be coming from the public school space. That doesn't mean that their accrediting agencies don't encourage some sort of ethics, codes of conduct, and background checks. It just means that it's not going to be the formal state processes as outlined in law for public school.
And I appreciate that, understand that, but I would, and I mean, maybe I need to look at the statute, or maybe the AG can rule on this, but I don't see that there would be any ban to requiring them to at least check and see if they have lost their license for something that is a threat to student safety, because otherwise they wouldn't know. Like, I can't go on, I can go and see that a teacher has revoked their license publicly, but I can't have their license revoked, but I can't see why. And there, we were in the news nationally for being a state where teachers were hopping around after doing bad things, and I don't want to see them hop into this private school space because we don't have because this part of the rule isn't strong enough. That's my concern.
Those are all excellent points, and we'll be certain to discuss what we can require or suggest through the AG. Also, I just wanted to stand corrected. Level 1 schools do background checks and have teacher licensures, 2 through 5 who do not.
Okay, great. Lillian, do you want me to keep going, or do you want to pop some of yours?
No, go ahead. Keep on going.
Okay. I'll just keep on going. Okay, my next questions are around disabilities. And so the subsection .04, agreement and funds transfer, first something kind of simple. Subsection E puts together releasing the LEA from obligations to the student once they enroll in ESA, and then participation in the program having parents, being essentially parents refusing their rights under IDEA. And so I would submit those need to be separated, and that the piece about participation equaling refusal to consent to services under IDEA needs to specify that would only apply for students with disabilities or for students who had recognized disabilities in the prior public school setting or something. It's just confusing otherwise.
We received that feedback yesterday, and we've already started the discussion with our general counsel and the AG's office.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you. And then the other piece of feedback I have on this, and you probably received this yesterday too. Sorry, I'm still flipping through here. Page 10 on the red line, the conditions of approval what the schools will agree to. Subsection D, they certify they shall not discriminate against participating students or applicants on the basis of race, color, or national origin, but there's nothing about disability. I understand that theoretically, because these schools aren't required, or because parents are required to waive their rights under IDEA to enroll in an ESA, that that they're not serving kids with disabilities, but I am not sure that this doesn't run afoul of the ADA, since these are public dollars, if they're allowed to discriminate against people with disabilities. So I would ask, maybe that's an AG question, but I have a real problem with disability not being on that list.
Thank you for that feedback. We are also unsure, and we're seeking out the opinion of the AG to build that out a little more.
Okay, thank you. And then the final piece on disability on page 13 of the red line, I guess this is when students return, this is return to the LEA. It has, section 5 has, upon enrollment in the LEA, basically it requires that the student or the parent request in writing an evaluation for services pursuant to IDEA, and that it should be treated as a request for an initial eval. And you may have gotten this feedback from the staff from me yesterday too, but I think that violates child find. And so I think that language, I think we ought to be a little more friendly to people with disabilities who go back into the school system, and there ought to be a more a more user-friendly process to do it, but certainly I don't think we can legally require parents to have a written request for them to be able to access services.
Thank you for the flag, and you're absolutely correct in all cases, and that has already been flagged for removal.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, and then the final piece that I wanted to just talk about, and this is not going to be new to anybody who was in the boardroom when we were discussing the IEA program, is the parent piece. I understand from following the process on this statute that this is intended to support education for high-risk families, like, there's a poverty requirement, there's all sorts of requirements here, and so I am concerned that the pieces in place are not as parent-friendly as they need to be able to properly serve those parents, and I'll give some examples, and then I'm going to be done. On page 7, subsection 2 of the use of funds, it goes through this really complex process in my mind about pre-approval and what you have to do, and I would like to know how we're going to make that user-friendly for these parents and for the families we're intending to serve, because that looks pretty daunting to me, and I think could be either a barrier or could set these parents up for, a situation where they're being required to pay back money because they didn't understand the process. So I would ask you guys to look at that process. And then another part in monitoring and compliance, page 9, there's a whole section on an anonymous fraud line. I would like to suggest that the department do some sort of helpline for parents as well, so that the parents are able to access that and get the information they need. And then finally, sorry, I thought I was all done, but right above that, subsection 8 of terms of the ESA, it talks about providing the parents and the students written explanations of the allowable uses. I just want to encourage the department to make that as user-friendly as possible and in as many forms as possible, whether it's online, written, with access to someone who can help them walk through it, because just to see what it was like, I did the IEA process, and I found it to be challenging even for me with my level of knowledge, and so I just want to make sure we're not setting parents up to be in a worse position than they were in before they accessed this program.
Thank you for that feedback. Absolutely agree and understand with what you're saying, and we definitely want to make this as user-friendly as possible, so we'll continue to think through ways that we can improve upon the process that we have with the IEA program. If you have any additional thoughts or feedback, please let us know.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Are there any other questions before I ask mine? Okay. On page 4, the application and admission process section, my questions are centered around some things that are not here that you may very well have them planned out someplace else, so just correct me along the way. So the length of the application window, I don't see where it's addressed here in the rule, and so can you speak to that and what you're planning there regarding the length of time an applicant, student or family member will have to apply? And do you intend to include that in the rule, or is that going to be in a procedure?
That's a great question. We don't intend to include it in the rule. We intend to include it in policy. As we talk to other states, we've learned that the enrollment windows have slightly adjusted from year to year to allow families more time to apply and to align more properly with public and private district schools' enrollment windows. And so those will be in policy, but they won't be included in rule.
Okay, and so the same would be true. How far in advance would that information be posted, and what is going to be the communication plan to inform parents that this opportunity to apply is now open?
Yeah, so this year will be a little different in terms of notice, that as soon as we are able to get good public input and have the state board feedback, we will finalize those windows and processes for families and publish them online as soon as possible. We'll also be doing direct mail to families in the district, the qualifying districts that will be participating. And then, of course, there will be some nonprofit stakeholders that will have boots on the ground, marketing efforts as well.
Okay. And then on page 5, under Agreement and Funds Transfer, Section 2, the agreement talks about the deadline set by the department. Is this going to be totally online, or will there be an option for parents who perhaps do not have the technology at home? What do you envision there with the potential for paper applications?
That's a great question. So there will not be any paper applications. However, the entire application process is mobile browser friendly. It can be completed completely from a mobile phone. We will also be utilizing application stations in the communities where families can walk in and receive online and device support to complete their applications.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then on page 6, under the same agreement and transfer, number 5, it talks about prior to the first reimbursement of the funds, the account holder must provide proof of enrollment in a Category 1, 2, or 3 private school. What would constitute that proof? And is that going to be in the policy as opposed to here in the rule?
Yes, ma'am. It's in policy, and it's an acceptance letter from the school.
An acceptance letter, okay. And then when do you expect or is the policy already in draft form? Because we've not seen the policy, have we?
No, you haven't. And it's in process.
Okay, it's in process. And when do you expect to have that ready to put before us?
That will probably come later as the rules are moving through. We want to make sure that the approval of the rule and the policy are timed to occur together. So we'll be monitoring the rule as it moves through the process and plan out the policy accordingly.
Okay. Thank you. And then use of funds on the same page. Just in general, a question about the deposit. Will the full amount of the funds be deposited into the ESSA account?
No, ma'am. And we're currently working through the pacing of how we fund the accounts for the parents. It will be no more than quarterly and no less than by semester. Somewhere in between there is how we will fund the accounts. We're also using a payment management vendor that will be able to provide storefronts to speak to some of the other questions around approved purchases, so that pre-approved purchases are already in those storefronts and available to parents, as opposed to them trying to make independent purchases by independent vendors and then not knowing whether or not it was an approved purchase. So truly trying to make this as good as an experience as possible for parents so that they're able to take advantage of the program and not have any kinks or frustration.
Okay, sounds good. And then this is minor, but on 1C, it looks like the continuation of that goes into, this is the clean version, which would match the red line, I'm sure. The top of page 7, it says D, but it looks like a continuation listing, and so there's a letter D there that I believe should move down to the next item. That's just a point for clarification. And then just a general question, because I believe it's in the very beginning. It talks about the department in the definition section, and then talks about the department may find a independent vendor or company to handle the ESSA process for the department. Are you all aware of any companies that are out there today in other states that you might tap into? What will be your process of even determining whether it's handled in-house versus to a third-party company?
That's a great question. This is Amity again. So I think it's a little too early to get down the road on what that looks like for Tennessee. But in speaking with other states, many of them have partnered with a third-party nonprofit organization to implement, whether it's a voucher program or something similar to our IEA or their tax credit scholarships. And those programs were awarded primarily based on competitive bids. So that certainly is an option that we want to keep open as we get this first year under our belt, but it's a little too soon to predict what that might look like for us. I think it's going to require a lot of input from our stakeholders and partners, and certainly some discussions with the governor's office and the commissioner.
I do not have any further questions. I want to know if any other board member has any questions. I do want to say this to you, to the Commissioner, to you, Amity, and to you, Elizabeth. I know that the calendar was pushed up. I know that you had to work diligently to get us to this point in time, to where you provided this document to us today, and I do want to thank you for your efforts, for your hard work in getting us to this point. Even with all the questions today, I think there could have been a ton more given the shorter window that you have been provided with, so I want to thank you for what you've accomplished. Are there any other comments? Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you for that. We appreciate those comments, and certainly Elizabeth and I are available to any of you at any time if you have questions as we go through this process. We really do appreciate the thought partnership in official meetings and unofficial meetings, so we look forward to hearing from you.
And yes, thank you, and we're thankful for your state board staff as well. They've been very invaluable and instrumental in this process.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for that, too. Any other comments or questions from board members?
Madam Chair, this is Bob Eby. I would just like to remind people that I think the public hearing is on October 1st, and there's still opportunities for input, and obviously there will be some changes between this reading and the next reading should we go ahead and pass this reading, and encourage everyone to read it and provide comments to their board members or attend the public hearing.
Lillian, this is Sarah. Just to kind of build on what Bob said, that's exactly right. There's information posted on the State Board's website about that hearing if people want to come in person at October 1st at 1 o'clock at the Board of Regents. But we can also accept and are accepting comments in written form, so that's also an option, and we'll treat all comments equally. And I would also just like to reiterate our appreciation to the department staff, to Amity and Elizabeth in particular, for their partnership. This has really been a team effort. The AG's office also has been instrumental in giving us feedback. So I would expect much of what we've discussed on the call today and additional changes and clarifications that the AG's office and the public will give us to be reflected in the final reading that you'll see in November. But just, again, really want to underscore how much we appreciate everybody's teamwork on this rule.
Thank you both for those comments. Is there a motion to approve item 3A, Education Savings Account Rule?
This is Bob. I so move.
Mr. Eby, thank you. Is there a second?
This is Mike Edwards. I second.
Mr. Edwards, thank you for the second. Any further discussion?
This is Wendy. I just want to make sure I'm on the record as saying that my vote on the first reading is based on the assumption that the concerns that were addressed today and that concerns that may be addressed at the public hearing will be reflected in the final rule. If I thought this was the final rule, my vote would be different, but I do think everybody is trying to move this in the right direction. So I didn't want there to be any confusion about that for my vote.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. I appreciate those words. Any other comments?
Yeah, this is Bob Eby. I really appreciate Wendy's comments, and I totally agree with her. And I think you had some very valid comments that we'll look forward to see how those are addressed.
I agree. Thank you. Casey, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Hart Grove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. Move into item 3B, Occupational Educator Scholarship Program Rule. Elizabeth, I believe you have that item too.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chapter 204 of the Public Acts of 2019 established an occupational educator scholarship program for prospective educators seeking a Tennessee occupational teaching license. Specifically, the program will provide a scholarship for the cost of the educator preparation program for prospective educators who agree to teach for 4 years in an occupational CTE course. This first read item establishes the rules for implementation of the scholarship, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
This is Bob Eby. First, let me say I think this is great. I'm really happy to see this moving forward. But I did have one question. It says that under the preference for the scholarship shall be as follows. First priority shall be given to applicants from rural communities and are seeking employment in a rural community. Is rural communities defined someplace?
We defined it in the definition section, which is .02. It means any community located outside a major urban or suburban area. But I'm still think that seems a little, do we have a map or something that says what's a major area, urban or suburban area?
That's a good question. There isn't a uniform definition of rural community right now. We will reach out to the Department of Economic and Community Development to try to come up with a more specific definition for that one.
Yeah, they should be help to you because they do have definitions, and so that's a great suggestion that you're going to follow through with. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve item 3B, Occupational Educator Scholarship Program Rule?
This Gordon, I'll move for approval.
Mr. Ferguson, is there a second?
Second, Darrell.
Thank you, Mr. Cobbins. Further discussion? Casey, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ms. Ferguson.
Aye.
Kim.
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
The motion is approved. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Agenda item 4, action items on final reading. Item 4A, amendments to the charter agreement and appeal process rule. Ms. Tess Stovall.
Yes, good afternoon, members. This rule that's being presented on final reading today is as a result of the passage of Public Chapter 219 of the 2019 General Assembly. The State Board was charged with developing the process and timelines for operators to petition their authorizer to amend their charter agreement. So this rule sets out the process that operators and authorizers will use to manage those petitions to amend their charter agreements, as well as the appeal process that the State Board will follow should we receive any appeals. We have vetted this language with both operators and authorizers across the state, as well as stakeholder groups. And since first reading, the following main changes have been made. First, you'll see a designated spring window for amendment petitions so that it will allow operators to amend their charter agreement both potentially in the fall as well as the spring. We've adjusted the timeline for the fall petition amendment window to begin on September the 1st. And we've clarified and specified what material changes can be petitioned for amendment both in the spring window as well as the fall window. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve amendments to the Charter Agreement and Appeal Process Rule?
This is Wendy, so moved.
Ms. Tucker, thank you. Is there a second?
This is Bob, second.
Mr. Eby provides a second. Last chance for further discussion. Okay. Casey, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
The motion is approved. Thank you. Item 4B, Teacher and Administrator Evaluation Policy. Mr. David Donaldson, I believe, is presenting this item.
Good afternoon, Board Chair, members of the Board, and Executive Director Morrison. This is David Donaldson. I serve as the Assistant Commissioner of Human Capital. First, I just wanted to say thank you to the Board members and to Executive Director Morrison for attending, and also specifically to Executive Director Morrison for presenting at the TOSS Superintendent's Conference. Really grateful for the collaboration and really look forward to coming back to the Board on recommendations as a result of those presentations. But for today, I have the pleasure of going over the final reading for the Teacher and Administrator Evaluation Policy 5.201, which is as part of the Charter School Alternate Observation Tool Approval process, all alternate observation models must be submitted to and approved by the State Board of Education. This policy adds an additional 5 observation models for use by charters. Those 5 are the Commitment to Continuous Growth model, the Purpose Preparatory Evaluation Rubric model, the Republic Educator Evaluation System model, Rocket Ship Public Schools Teaching Performance Rubrics model, and the New Teacher Project Observation Rubric model. The policy also clarifies the role of the department in achievement measure selection. We recommend approval of this item on final reading, and I'd specifically also like to highlight the support and collaboration from Amy Owen on this matter, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Donaldson?
This is Wendy. I have a question.
Please proceed.
With these, are all the charters now, assuming these are passed, do all the charters now have an evaluation model ready to use?
That is correct.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
This is Bob Eby. I think we have one small change that my understanding will probably require a motion. But if you turn to Appendix A, student surveys, the second paragraph says, additional surveys instruments may granted approval. I think that should be, I presume that should be may be granted approval by the State Board of Education. And I think since it's a change to for the second reading, I'll have to ask our parliamentarian, but I think that requires a motion. If it's so, I will move that we add the word be in between may and granted.
Mr. James, are you with us? Nathan?
That's correct, right? Yes, you're right, Bob. You need a motion there.
Okay.
Okay.
I second. This is Mike Edwards. I second Bob's motion.
Mr. Eby provides the motion. Mr. Edwards provides a second. Any discussion? Casey, would you please call the roll for the approval of the amendment?
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
The amendment is approved. So now we need a motion to approve the policy. Do I have a motion to approve?
Approve as amended.
As amended, thank you.
This is Bob Eby. I'll move for approval as amended.
Mr. Eby provides the motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Doherty, I second.
I'm sorry.
Sounds like everybody said.
Didn't hear who was first. Is that Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Casey, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
The motion is approved. Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. We appreciate your partnership. Moving into 4C, Tennessee School Bus Specifications Policy. I believe Mr. Joey Chilton.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Joey Chilton. I serve as the Department's Student Transportation Consultant. I'm presenting Tennessee School Bus Specifications Policy 2.400 for final reading. As you know, at its July 2019 meeting, the State Board approved updated school bus specifications. This final read item makes a correction to change the body build date from July 1st, 2019 to January 1st, 2020. The item also proposes to amend the specifications to include a child alert reminder system. That system was intended to be included in the 2012 and 2020 standards on page 159. This is technical correction only, and all buses purchased in the interim already have this safety feature. The Department recommends approval of this final reading, and the SBE staff concurs. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
I do have a question for clarification. It says that each bus shall be equipped with a child alert reminder system, and you've indicated, and I want to make sure I understood this clearly, that all new buses come equipped with that safety feature. What about the buses that are already out there that did not, when they were purchased, did not have this feature? Are they required to install that feature? Or am I misunderstanding this?
Right. So I can clarify that. Good question. So this was actually in the specifications, I believe, since 2005 or 2007 or so. In the 2012 edition is actually in those specifications, but I believe it did not make it somehow on the edition that is on the SBE website. And that was the edition that we were going by when we redid these. And so, again, it was accidentally left out of the language. But school bus manufacturers know that that is in the language and it was intended to be in the language. And so school buses out there will have that feature on them and do currently have those features on them.
Okay, but again, to be clear, there are buses that are out there that do not have this alert system. Is that correct?
I believe if they were manufactured before the first time this was put into Tennessee specifications, before 2005, I think, they may be out there. Beyond that, every bus should have this feature on it.
No, I do understand that, and I think the only point that I'm trying to make in this particular case, if there are buses that are out there, there could likely be a financial impact to an LEA. And believe me when I say this, they should be equipped with this feature. I'm just saying that I think in the analysis there could be, to some districts, a financial impact if they're not already retrofitted with this feature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so these specifications are for buses that have that particular body build date from here and beyond, so it would not affect buses that were built prior to 2005. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm with you. And I don't have that sheet up right now, but there's something funky with the labeling when you get to that particular section. If you look around that section, you'll see that this item, I believe, is labeled number 6 or so, but it should be probably letter C. So just look at that when you have an opportunity, because it's the warning system section, and then it starts with a letter A, and then it moves to some Roman numerals. But just look at it when you have a chance, because I think that should be a letter C for this particular language. Okay?
Yeah.
And if I need to send it to you in a separate email, I'm happy to do that. Very minor.
Yeah, I think we were looking at the same thing you're looking at, which was an older edition, and that correction has been made.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Bob Eby. Just a question. Do you know what the typical life of a bus is? I was just curious how many buses before 2005 might still be out there. I mean,
so buses in Tennessee typically do not go beyond 18 years. That's kind of the law. 15 years, anything past 15 years would be considered extended use, and they have to apply for a special permit from the Department of Safety to go up to 18 years old. So essentially there could be buses out there as old as 2001.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve Tennessee Schools Bus Specifications Policy?
This is Bob Eby. I'll so move.
Mr. Eby provides the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Darrell.
Mr. Coppins provides the second. Further discussion? Casey, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
The motion is approved. Thank you, Mr. Chilton. Passing item 4D, because we pulled it, we're moving down to item 4E, State Identified Exemplary Schools. I believe Mr. Hardy will be presenting.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board, and excited to spend the next 4 items with you. This is Mike Hardy. I'm the Chief Strategy and Data Officer with the Tennessee Department of Education. And the first item is the State Identified Exemplary Districts. In accordance with TCA 491602 and Tennessee's accountability system, the Department of Education is charged with presenting to the Board of Education a listing of districts identified as receiving the highest accountability determination. Districts with a final weighted average score greater than or equal to 3.1 in the accountability calculations receive a determination of exemplary based on the 2018 and 2019 school year data. Are there any questions with the release of this information and the motion as presented?
This is Wendy. I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I don't mean this to sound wrong, but this information in the reward schools and the priority schools has been all over with schools having celebrations and everything else. And my memory was that usually it was embargoed until we actually voted on it. So I'm just wondering if I'm remembering that wrong or if there was some change in that process.
That's an excellent question. I'm afraid that I can get back with you on the answer as I've only recently joined the department.
Hey, Wendy, this is Elizabeth Five-Ash. We did move the timelines this year. You're correct. In previous years, it has been embargoed until you all have approved. But that has mainly been in years where we are announcing a new priority list. We have also released the data pending state board approval in prior years as well. And in all of the information that we sent out to districts and on our website and to media, all stated that these designations were pending state board approval. And so we wanted to be very, very clear that the state board had the final approval before these designations were official.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I'm not trying to be difficult about it, but nothing that I saw from any of the districts said anything about it pending approval. And I'm not sure that we've ever historically not approved the list. So it may just be sort of academic, but definitely, I started seeing all the announcements and celebrations, and I thought I'd missed a board meeting, but you cleared it up for me, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hardy, I would really appreciate it if you would read the list of 21 districts that achieved this designation. I think their names need to be heard in this board meeting today, even though it's been celebrated, and they all have a right to celebrate, but I would love it if you would please read these names for the record.
I would be more than delighted to read these districts.
Thank you.
The districts that received the highest determination are as follows: Clinton, Alcoa, Murrayville, South Carroll, Alamo, Bells, Gibson, Rogersville, Henderson, Loudoun, Athens, Etowah, Richard City, Dayton, Murfreesboro, Lakeland, Tipton, Truesdale, Williamson, Wilson, and Lenore.
Mr. Hardy, thank you for doing that. And where are you from?
Most recently from Texas.
Okay. Well, welcome to
So
Tennessee.
I probably got some of these pronunciations wrong, and my apologies already.
Well, it's understandable. I think anybody moving in from another state might have had some challenges, but thank you so much for reading them. I'm not going to correct all of them, but it is Loudoun County, Etowah, Trousdale. I think I got all of them that might have been pronounced incorrectly, but I understand completely. That is not a criticism. I thank you for being here with us, and thank you for sharing the 21 districts that earned this distinction. Congratulations to them.
I appreciate the feedback on the pronunciation. I'll probably need some more.
No, it's okay. It's okay. No problem. Is there any other comments or questions before we move to approve and get a motion? Is there a motion to approve the state identified exemplary districts?
I so moved. This is Mike Edwards.
Mr. Edwards provides the motion. Is there a second?
This Gordon, I'll second.
Mr. Ferguson provides the second. Any other further comments or discussion? Casey, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Stevie.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
The motion is approved. Thank you. Item 4F, state identified in need of improvement school districts. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the board. This second item is in accordance with Tennessee law and Tennessee's accountability system. The Department of Education is charged with presenting to the state board a listing of districts receiving the lowest accountability determination. And districts received a need of improvement designation if their overall final score calculated for the 2018-2019 school year fell within the bottom 5% of all districts. And that is regardless of their scores in any of the subcategories. And I would be happy to read out the list publicly or answer questions at this time about the motion.
Are there any questions or comments? I'm not asking you to read that list unless there's somebody else on the board that thinks he should.
I need the practice, but I'm happy to move on to the next one.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve item 4F, state identified in need of improvement school district?
This is Mike Edwards. I'll make a motion.
Mr. Edwards provides the motion. Is there a second?
This is Bob Eby, second.
Mr. Eby provides the second. Further discussion? Casey, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Hargrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
The motion is approved. Thank you. Let's move to item 4G, State Identified Priority Schools. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you. In accordance with Tennessee law, the Commissioner and the Department of Education must present to the Board a list of all schools placed in priority school status. The last priority list was identified in 2018, and the purpose of this item is to reread the list but remove the schools from the priority status that met exit criteria based on 2018-2019 accountability data. Okay. The schools that were removed, and I will give my best shot at get the pronunciation right, are Jellicoe Elementary, LaGrange Moscow Elementary, and Jellicoe is in Campbell County. LaGrange Moscow Elementary is in Fayette County. Dunbar Elementary, Getwell Elementary, and Robert R. Church Elementary are in Shelby County. And Georgian Hills Achievement Elementary, Lester Prep, and Cornerstone Prep Denver campus. Those last 3 are in the Achievement School District.
Are there any questions or comments?
This is Wendy. I have a question. I just want to make sure I understand. So that we don't run the list every year. I know. So this is not a year we would normally run the list, or are we not running it because of the past testing issues?
Yeah, so this list at present is being run every 3 years, and so we don't rerun it. These are the same schools from the previous year, minus those few that we just listed that have been removed since then.
So every year, schools have the opportunity to basically be removed out of priority status, but then you run a new list every 3 years. Just make sure I understand.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments? Is there a motion to approve?
This is Bob Eby. Yes, so move.
Mr. Eby provides the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Darrell.
Mr. Cobbins provides the second. Further discussion? Casey, would you please call the roll?
Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eby.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kemp.
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Hargrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, 7 ayes.
The motion is approved. Thank you. Moving into item 4H, State Identified Reward Schools. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. In accordance with Tennessee law and the accountability system, the Tennessee Department of Education is charged with presenting to the State Board of Education a listing of reward schools. And these are schools who have an overall accountability score greater than or equal to 3.1. Reward schools demonstrate excellence in achievement and growth for students as well as for student groups. And I would be more than happy to take another 40 minutes and do the whole list if you'd like me to, and get lots of practice, but I would also just be willing to take questions at this time.
I would love for us to have the ability to take the time to read all of those names. There are 427 reward schools on the list, unless I counted incorrectly, and that's certainly possible. But I think they are to be congratulated to achieving this status. I know that there are many on this list that have achieved it multiple years in a row. And so I'm pleased to see this list of 427, and we certainly would like to see more on the list. Any questions or comments from anyone else?
This is Wendy. Yet again, I have a question. My memory of reward school status in the past was that it was top 5% in either growth or achievement. So it sounds like we have changed the measure. So is that because of ESSA and is this the first list under this new measure?
This is the same measure that was used the previous school year, and is the same measure that is in the currently approved ESSA plan. I can't speak to any time prior to that current ESSA plan.
Elizabeth Five-Ash, do you know? My memory is it was top 5%, so maybe last year was the first year it was changed?
You're correct. Before we did cap the number of reward schools, and we removed the cap, and so now we have a much larger number of reward schools.
And is there any correlation in the top 5% in growth, top 5% in achievement to this 3.1 and above? I mean, is that like is it like a basic? Is it comparable, or is it just a totally different measure? I mean, I know it's all measuring that they're doing great work. I'm not.
Yeah, there is a correlation. We can explore it further, but there definitely is a correlation between those who have the highest achievement and highest growth and schools on this list.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Amy Owen at the State Board. Just to add, we did use this same criteria last year for identifying reward schools. I believe this is the second year we've done that based on our ESSA plan.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, and it's confirming what was just said by Mr. Hardy and Ms. Five-Ash. And I think this percentage is somewhere in the 24% of total school districts, or schools rather, total number of schools. It's about close to 24%. Okay, great. Thank you. Is there any other discussion or questions? Are there any other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the state identified reward schools list?
Ms. Gordon, so moved.
Mr. Ferguson provides the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Darrell.
Mr. Cobbins provides the second. Any further discussion? Casey, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Cobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Eden.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Ms. Kim.
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
The motion is approved. I do want to ask a question, make a comment with regard to what Ms. Tucker said at the beginning of this process, and the fact that there were celebrations, and we're delighted and thrilled that schools were celebrating their successes. But it does seem rather perfunctory, and it is unnecessary to do this the way that we did. So what can we do to avoid this happening next year so that we see the list first before it is released and the embargo? I don't even think the embargo existed this time. But what can we do to avoid that, or should we say that the State Board does not have a role in this process? Or is it mandated? Is it in statute or law?
Madam Chair, this is Elizabeth. We can commit to working with the State Board staff earlier to get a special called meeting in August to ensure that you all are able to see and approve the list prior to it being released publicly. And you are correct, the statute does require the State Board to approve these lists. So we will try to make sure that we work on scheduling that meeting sooner. When we were working to schedule it this year, the board members' schedules did not permit an August meeting, and so we will build in more time for that next year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Before we adjourn, are there any comments from the board members that you'd like to share before we adjourn?
This is Bob Eby. I would just like to say that I'm serving on a mass alignment group. We had our first meeting yesterday, It's consists of Department of Education, THEC, Tennessee Board of Regents, several superintendents, and basically what it is to look at how we can bridge the gaps between high school and college math, and to look at new pathways. It's a year-long process, but I'm really encouraged by what we did yesterday. I think there's going to be a press release out on it too, they said.
Thank you for that update, and we appreciate you serving on behalf of the board. Thanks, Bob. Any other questions or comments before we depart? Thank you all very much. I appreciate the great work and the collaboration between our staff and the Department of Education. I value everything that you do day in and day out. And so without objection, we are officially adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all.